The untold dark secrets of America's most mysterious mansion. The lights never stayed on for long. A mansion that held 110 rooms, a fortune that could buy cities, a family name that opened every door in America, but behind the marble columns and gilded ceilings, something else lived, not ghosts. Worse, secrets that money couldn't bury, decisions that wealth couldn't undo. And one question that haunts the property still: what really happened in the locked wing? This is not a story about architecture. It is a story about what happens when power meets paranoia, when ambition becomes obsession, when a house built to celebrate life becomes a monument to everything its owners tried to hide. They said the mansion was cursed. They said the family was doomed. They said no one who lived there ever found peace. Were they right, or was the curse something simpler and more terrible? The weight of choices made in darkness, the price of secrets kept too long, the slow collapse of a dynasty built on sand. If you're fascinated by the hidden stories behind America's grandest estates, the mysteries that official histories never mention, and the dark truths that families spend fortunes to conceal, then stay with me. Like this investigation, subscribe to this channel, and tell me in the comments which American mansion I should investigate next. Your support makes these deep explorations possible. Now let's walk through the gates. Let's enter the rooms where the truth was locked away. Let's discover what they never wanted you to know. Begin with the money. Always begin with the money. Because without understanding where the fortune came from, you cannot understand what it became, or what it cost. The year is 1847. The California gold rush hasn't started yet. Most of America still farms, builds, trades in tangible goods. But there is another kind of wealth forming. Quiet, industrial, brutal. Enter William Hartwell Lockwood, 23 years old, the son of a failed textile merchant from Providence, Rhode Island. No inheritance, no connections, no prospects that anyone can see. What he has is singular, a willingness to do what others will not. He goes west, not to California, to Michigan, the lumber territories, forests so vast they seem infinite, trees 400 years old. White pine that can build a nation if someone has the cruelty to cut it fast enough and cheap enough to beat every rival. Lockwood has that cruelty. By 1850, he owns 2 lumber camps. By 1855-7, the method is simple. Purchase land at government rates, clear-cut everything, move on. Labor is immigrant, Finnish, Norwegian, Irish, men who speak little English, know nothing of American law, and work 16-hour days for wages paid in company scrip, not cash. Scrip redeemable only at company stores where prices are triple the market rate. It is not slavery, it is something just legal enough to survive scrutiny. Barely. The profits are staggering. Lumber feeds the expanding railroads, the growing cities, the western settlements. Chicago burns in 1871. Lockwood's mills provide the timber to rebuild it. His fortune multiplies overnight. By 1875, his net worth reaches $3 million, roughly $90 million today. He is 41 years old, but wealth at that scale attracts attention, and attention brings questions. In 1876, a congressional committee investigates timber fraud. Accusations of illegal land seizures, bribery of federal surveyors, and systematic exploitation of immigrant labor. Testimony is taken. Evidence is gathered. The committee prepares a report. It never reaches the floor. Lockwood retains 3 law firms, 2 former senators, and 1 sitting congressman. Documents disappear. Witnesses recant. The investigation closes without findings. Cost to Lockwood $120,000, a rounding error. The lesson he learns is not to stop. It is to be more careful, and to build something so grand, so visible, so philanthropic in appearance that his name becomes synonymous not with exploitation but with progress, with culture, with the American dream made visible in stone. He begins planning the mansion in 1878. But before he can build it, he needs to marry. Not for love. Love is a luxury. He needs a wife whose name carries the weight his money alone cannot purchase. A woman whose pedigree can launder his past. Her name is Margaret Ashford Bellingham. She is 26, the daughter of a Boston shipping family whose fortune has faded but whose social position has not. The Bellinghams trace their lineage to colonial governors, Revolutionary War generals, and Mayflower passengers. They possess exactly what Lockwood lacks: legitimacy. Margaret is not beautiful by the standards of the day. Tall, severe, with a face that photographs describe as handsome rather than lovely, but she is educated, fluent in French and German, accomplished at the piano, and most importantly, she understands the transaction. They marry in October 1878, a small ceremony. Margaret's family attends but does not celebrate. They know what this is. an exchange, his money for their name. Youth and pedigree traded for security and status. The wedding night is spent in a Boston hotel. No honeymoon. Lockwood has land to purchase. He has found the site. 240 acres on the Hudson River, 90 miles north of New York City. High bluffs overlooking the water, forest thick enough to provide privacy, close enough to the city to reach by rail, far enough to feel like its own kingdom. He names the estate Thornwood, not after anything. Just a name that sounds old, established, rooted. A lie that will become truth through repetition. The Architectural Commission goes to Richard Morris Hunt, the most prestigious architect in America, designer of the Vanderbilt Mansions, the Metropolitan Museum of Art's facade, and the pedestal for the Statue of Liberty. Hunt's name on the plans ensures the house will be taken seriously, that it will be covered in the press, that it will announce arrival. Hunt listens to Lockwood's requirements. 110 rooms, a great hall that can seat 300 for dinner, a ballroom with ceilings 25 feet high, a library to hold 10,000 volumes, guest wings for extended visits, staff quarters for 50 servants, a private chapel, stables for 20 horses, greenhouses for year-round flowers, gardens designed by Frederick Law Olmsted, the man who created Central Park. Nothing modest, nothing uncertain, everything scaled to declare permanence. Hunt estimates the cost at $1.8 million, roughly $54 million today. The timeline, 4 years if construction proceeds without delay. Lockwood agrees immediately. He does not negotiate. He does not ask for alternatives. This is not about money. It is about monument. Ground breaks in May 1879. 200 men arrive to begin excavation. The site is not flat. Hunt's design calls for the mansion to rise from the bluff as if it grew there. Stone terraces will step down to the river. Gardens will cascade in levels. The house itself will sit at the highest point, visible from the river 3 miles in either direction. Symbolism is not accidental. Lockwood wants every boat on the Hudson to see his house. He wants travelers on the eastern shore to look across the water and know that something significant stands on the western bank. He wants permanence made visible. The foundation goes deep. 18 feet in some places, anchored to bedrock. Hunt specifies granite from Vermont. Each block cut to precise dimensions and numbered to match the drawings. Masons work through the summer and fall. By winter, the foundation is complete and the superstructure begins. Limestone from Indiana, the same quarries that supplied the Capitol building in Washington. 60,000 square feet of it, shipped by rail in numbered loads, unloaded at a temporary siding built specifically for the project. Hauled by wagon up a newly cut road to the site. The workforce grows. By 1880, 350 men are employed. Stonemasons, carpenters, plasterers, electricians, glaziers, ironworkers, laborers. They live in temporary barracks near the work site. Meals are provided, medical care is not. Injuries are frequent. Falls from scaffolding, crushed hands, hernias from lifting stone. 3 men died during construction, 1 from a fall, 2 from infections after injuries. Their names are recorded in payroll ledgers but appear on no memorial. Lockwood visits monthly. He arrives by private rail car, inspects the progress, meets with Hunt, and approves or rejects changes. Margaret accompanies him twice. She finds the site overwhelming. The scale frightens her. She tells her sister in a letter preserved at the Massachusetts Historical Society, "It is not a house. It is a proclamation, and I am to live inside it." By 1881, the shell is complete. The roof goes on. Copper tiles that will patina to green, slate for the secondary roofs, lead flashing at every joint. 4 chimneys, each serving multiple fireplaces. 29 hearths in total, not counting the kitchens and staff areas. The interior work begins. This is where the cost escalates. Marble from Italy, 6 types chosen for specific rooms. Carrara for the entrance hall, Pavonazzo for the dining room, Verd for the library. Each shipment insured for replacement cost plus freight. Woodwork in quarter, sawn oak, mahogany, and walnut. Parquet floors laid in geometric patterns that require craftsmen to work on their knees for months. Plaster ceilings molded with classical motifs. Cornices, medallions, friezes, all hand-sculpted. Stained glass windows designed by John Lafarge. 12 major installations. Biblical scenes for the chapel. Allegorical figures for the library. Floral designs for the music room. Each window takes 3 months to fabricate. The total cost for glass alone, $48,000. Lighting is both gas and electric. Edison's system is still experimental in 1881, but Lockwood insists on having it. He wants to be among the first. The installation requires its own power plant, A building 200 feet from the main house contains a coal-fired generator that produces direct current electricity for 240 light fixtures. The system works. Barely. Voltage fluctuates. Bulbs burn out constantly. But when guests arrive and Lockwood throws a switch that illuminates the entire first floor simultaneously, the effect is overwhelming. This is not candlelight. This is the future. By late 1882, the house is habitable, not finished. That will take another year, but livable. The Lockwoods move in during November. No grand opening yet. That will wait until every detail is perfect. Margaret walks through the completed rooms and feels what she felt at the site 3 years earlier. Fear, not of the house, of what living in it will require, the performance, the hosting, the endless parade of guests who must be impressed, entertained, fed, and sent away, convinced that the Lockwoods are not merely wealthy but cultured, generous, rooted in something older than money. She is 29 years old, and she is exhausted before the first party even begins. Lockwood feels something different. Satisfaction. He has built what he intended, a monument that cannot be ignored, a house that will force society to accept him not as a lumber baron with a brutal past, but as a patron, a builder, a man of consequence. He believes the house will protect him, that its beauty will distract from the ugliness that paid for it, that stone and marble can rewrite history. He is wrong, because money builds houses, but it does not build peace. And secrets, no matter how deeply buried, do not stay buried forever. The first grand event at Thornwood takes place in June 1883. An inaugural ball, 400 invitations sent to New York, Boston, Philadelphia, and Washington. The guest list is calculated. Old money families who might otherwise snub a lumber fortune. Industrialists whose wealth is newer than Lockwood's. Senators and congressmen whose support is valuable. Newspaper editors whose coverage can shape perception. The response rate is 72%. 288 acceptances. This is higher than Lockwood dared hope. It means the strategy is working. The house is doing what he built it to do. Preparations consume 6 weeks. Margaret oversees every detail. Menus are drafted, revised, and finalized. 16 courses, French service, wine selected by a sommelier brought from New York, champagne by the case. 40 waiters hired for the night, trained on the floor plan and the service sequence. Flowers arrive from 3 states. Roses, orchids, lilies arranged in displays that fill the entrance hall, the ballroom, the dining room, and the terraces. The cost for flowers alone, $4,000, an orchestra of 22 musicians, repertoire chosen to demonstrate sophistication. Strauss, Offenbach, Verdi, nothing controversial, nothing too modern. Music that signals culture without challenging it. Margaret's gown is custom-made in Paris, silk taffeta in deep blue embroidered with silver thread. It costs $1,200. She wears her mother's diamonds. Lockwood wears formal evening dress and a look of controlled triumph. The guests arrive by train. A special siding has been built to accommodate private cars. Carriages ferry guests from the station to the house. The drive is lit with torches. The effect is theatrical, as intended. They enter the great hall and stop. The space is designed for this reaction. 50 feet long, 30 feet wide, ceilings 18 feet high. A double staircase curves upward. The floor is marble. The walls are paneled in mahogany. A chandelier with 144 candles hangs at the center. When lit, it throws light that bends and multiplies off the polished surfaces. Guests murmur approval. Lockwood receives them with Margaret at his side. They shake hands, accept compliments, direct people toward the ballroom. Margaret's smile is fixed. Photographs from the night show her expression never changes. The same controlled, polite curve of the lips, no warmth, no spontaneity, just the face she has learned to wear. The dinner begins at 8, tables seat 12, service proceeds flawlessly. The sommelier's wines complement each course. Conversation flows. Guests relax into the abundance. This is what they came for, not just food, reassurance that Lockwood's money has been converted into something acceptable. That his house meets the standards, that he can be admitted to their circles without embarrassment. After dinner, the ball. The orchestra plays in the music room, doors open to flood the hall and adjoining rooms with sound. Dancing begins. Lockwood dances the first waltz with Margaret. Her posture is perfect. Her steps are precise. Her face remains controlled. One guest, a society matron from Boston, writes in her diary that night, "Mrs. Lockwood is a gracious hostess and the house is magnificent." Yet I could not shake the feeling that she was performing a role rather than living a life. She never once laughed. The observation is accurate. Margaret does not laugh that night or many nights after because she understands something her husband does not. The house is not a shelter. It is a stage, and she is trapped on it. By midnight, the guests are drunk on champagne and approval. They toast Lockwood. They praise Thornwood. They declare it the finest estate on the Hudson. He accepts the praise with visible satisfaction. This is what he wanted: validation, acceptance, the transformation of lumber money into cultural legitimacy. But Margaret, standing beside him, feels something else. A weight settling onto her shoulders, the weight of expectation, of performance, of a life that will now be measured by how well she can host, entertain, and maintain the fiction that this is natural, that she belongs here, that she is happy. The party ends near 3 in the morning. The last guests depart. The staff begins the cleanup. Margaret ascends the stairs to her suite. Lockwood remains in the library, drinking brandy alone. In her private sitting room, Margaret removes her jewelry and gown. She dismisses her maid. She sits in the dark and allows herself, finally, to drop the smile. Years later, her letters reveal what she felt that night. I have married a house as much as a man, and I am not certain which demands more from me. The pattern is established. Thornwood will host 8 to 12 major events each year. Dinners, balls, garden parties, charity galas, each one requiring weeks of preparation. Each one demanding Margaret's complete attention. Each one exhausting her further. Between events, there are weekend guests, visitors who arrive Friday and stay until Monday, 10 to 20 people at a time. They must be entertained, fed, and made comfortable. Margaret manages it all: the menus, the guest room assignments, the activities. The flow of conversation at meals. Lockwood is often absent. His business requires travel. Lumber operations in Michigan, investments in railroads, mining, and manufacturing. He is building an empire. The house is just one piece of it. Important but not consuming. For Margaret, the house is everything. It defines her days. It structures her obligations. It becomes the prison she cannot escape without scandal. By 1885, she has borne 2 children. A son, William Jr., born in 1884, a daughter, Catherine, born in 1885. The pregnancies are difficult. The births are managed by a doctor brought from New York. Margaret recovers slowly. The children are raised by nurses. Margaret sees them for an hour each afternoon. This is normal for families of their class, but it adds another layer of distance to her life. She is a hostess, a manager, a symbol. Motherhood is delegated. She begins spending time in the chapel. Not from religious fervor, from need for solitude. The chapel is the one room in Thornwood where she is not expected to perform, where she can sit alone and breathe. The household staff notices. They see her there often, sometimes reading, sometimes simply sitting in silence. They do not gossip. They understand. Even servants recognize the cost of living in a palace. Lockwood does not notice, or if he does not inquire. His attention is on expansion. He is purchasing more land. Planning additional buildings, a guest cottage, an expanded stable, a conservatory. Thornwood is not finished. It is growing. Margaret does not want it to grow. She wants it to shrink, to become smaller, quieter, more human, but that is not an option. The house has its own momentum now, and she is swept along. In the winter of 1886, something breaks, not dramatically, not visibly, but inside something gives way. She is hosting a dinner for 20. A senator from New York and his wife, 2 congressmen, local gentry. The meal is proceeding smoothly. Conversation is animated. Wine is flowing. Lockwood is holding court at the head of the table, telling a story about his early days in Michigan. Margaret is seated at the opposite end. A guest asks her a question. She does not hear it. She is staring at the chandelier above the table. 144 candles burning. She is counting them over and over, losing count, starting again. The guest repeats the question. Margaret startles. She apologizes, offers a vague answer. The moment passes. The dinner continues, but something has shifted. That night, alone in her room, Margaret writes in her private journal, I am disappearing. The house remains. The guests remain, but I am fading, and no one sees. She does not show the entry to anyone. She does not speak of it. This is not something women of her class discuss. Unhappiness is a personal failure. To admit it is to admit weakness. So she continues, hosting, smiling, managing, performing, but the cost is accumulating, and it will come due in ways no one anticipates. Thornwood has 110 rooms. Most are known, documented, photographed. The Great Hall, the ballroom, the dining room, the library, the music room, 32 bedrooms, 14 bathrooms, staff quarters on the 3rd floor, storage in the basement. Every room accounted for on the architect's plans, except one wing. The eastern wing, 3 stories. 14 rooms, a separate staircase, doors that lock from the inside, windows that face away from the main house toward the forest. On the architectural drawings filed with the county, it is labeled private family quarters. But it is never used as such. The family sleeps in the main house. Guests are housed in the western wing. The eastern wing remains closed. Staff members are instructed never to enter. The doors are locked. The keys are kept by Lockwood personally. When guests ask about it during tour, Margaret offers vague explanations. Storage, future expansion, renovation that has not yet begun. The answers satisfy most people, but not everyone. In 1887, a journalist from Harper's Weekly visits to write a feature on Thornwood. He is given a full tour. He photographs the public rooms. He interviews Lockwood about the construction. He speaks with Margaret about entertaining. Near the end of the visit, he asks about the locked wing. Lockwood's expression hardens. He says it is private, not part of the tour. The journalist persists. He mentions that completeness is important for the article, that readers will want to know about the entire house. Lockwood ends the interview. The journalist is escorted to the train station that afternoon. The article is never published. No explanation is given. But the question does not go away. It circulates among guests, among staff, among the families who visit Thornwood and wonder what lies behind those locked doors. The truth, when it emerges, does not come all at once. It seeps out in fragments, whispers from dismissed servants, documents found decades later, testimony from family members who break their silence only when everyone involved is dead. The locked wing was built for Margaret's sister. Her name was Eliza Bellingham, 2 years younger than Margaret. The family does not speak of her. She does not appear in photographs. Her name is absent from the social registers. Eliza was born in 1854. By all accounts, she was a bright child, curious, lively, quick to laugh, but by her early 20s, something changed. She began experiencing episodes, periods of intense anxiety followed by deep withdrawals. She would refuse to leave her room for days. She would weep without cause. She would speak of visions, fears, threats that no one else could see. In 1877, the Bellingham family consulted doctors. The diagnosis varied: neurasthenia, hysteria, nervous exhaustion. The treatments were what they always were for women in that era: rest, isolation, and silence. Eliza was sent to a private sanitarium in upstate New York. She remained there for 6 months. When she returned home, she seemed improved, quieter, more controlled, but the episodes continued. By 1878, when Margaret married Lockwood, the Bellingham family faced a problem. Eliza was 24, unmarried, increasingly unstable, a potential scandal. In an era when mental illness was viewed as a family failing, Eliza was a liability. The solution was pragmatic. Lockwood agreed to take responsibility for her, not publicly. She would not live with them as family. But the eastern wing of Thornwood would be built to house her. Discreetly, privately, permanently. The arrangement was financial and social. Lockwood absorbed the cost of her care. The Bellinghams were relieved of the burden. In exchange, Lockwood gained something valuable: leverage, a secret that bound the Bellingham family to him, that ensured their continued social support, that prevented them from ever distancing themselves from his lumber-stained reputation. Eliza moved into the locked wing in late 1883. She was brought quietly. No announcements, no introductions to staff. She simply appeared and disappeared behind locked doors. The wing was furnished comfortably, not luxuriously. Practical furniture, heavy drapes, carpets that muffled sound. A sitting room, a bedroom, a small dining room, a bathroom with a lock on the outside. A nurse was employed to care for her. The nurse lived in an adjoining room. She was paid generously. Her instructions were clear: keep Eliza comfortable, keep her quiet, keep her hidden. Margaret visited her sister regularly. Every afternoon when she was in residence, she would unlock the door with a key Lockwood kept in his study. She would sit with Eliza for an hour. Sometimes they spoke. Often they did not. Eliza's condition was unpredictable. Some days she was lucid, conversational, almost her old self. Other days she was unreachable, lost in fears and confusions that no reasoning could penetrate. Margaret found these visits both necessary and unbearable. Necessary because Eliza was her sister, and abandoning her completely was unthinkable. Unbearable because seeing Eliza trapped in that wing, slowly deteriorating, was a mirror. Margaret saw her own imprisonment reflected in different terms. The staff knew. They could not help but know. They saw Margaret ascending the stairs to the locked wing each afternoon. They saw the nurse ordering meals for 2. They saw the laundry. They heard occasionally sounds from behind the doors, weeping, shouting. Once something breaking, But they did not speak of it, not to outsiders. Loyalty and fear kept them silent. Loyalty to Margaret, who treated them with a respect unusual for employers of that class. Fear of Lockwood, who made clear that any servant who gossiped would be dismissed without reference, a death sentence for domestic workers whose employment depended on character letters. The secret held. For years it held. But secrets have weight. They press on the people who keep them. They shape behavior, limit choices, create invisible walls. Margaret's exhaustion was not just from hosting, it was from the double life. The public performance downstairs, the private vigil upstairs, the constant awareness that one wing of her house held a truth that could destroy her social position if revealed. By 1889, Eliza's condition worsened. The episodes became more frequent. The nurse reported that she was sleeping poorly, eating little, speaking less. She was fading. In March 1890, Eliza died. The official cause, recorded by a doctor brought from New York, was heart failure. She was 36 years old. There was no public funeral, no obituary. Eliza was buried in a private cemetery on Thornwood's grounds, a small plot near the edge of the forest. No headstone, just a flat marker with her initials and the year. Margaret attended alone. Lockwood did not. He considered his obligation fulfilled. The problem had been managed. The secret had been kept. He saw no reason to dwell on it. Margaret stood by the grave and wept, not just for Eliza, for herself. For the years she had spent pretending her sister did not exist, for the complicity she could not escape. After the burial, the locked wing was closed permanently. The furniture was removed, the rooms were stripped, the doors were sealed. No one entered again, but the wing remained, visible from the outside. A blank section of the house that guests still asked about and that Margaret still deflected with vague explanations. And at night sometimes she dreamed she heard sounds from behind those doors, weeping, calling, her name spoken in a voice she recognized. The locked wing became a kind of monument, not to Eliza, who had no public acknowledgement, but to the cost of respectability, to what families will hide to preserve their reputations, to the people who disappear so that others can shine. Thornwood's secret was not supernatural, it was human, and that made it darker than any ghost. By 1895, William Lockwood is 61 years old. His fortune at its peak reaches $8 million, roughly $240 million today. He owns timber operations across 3 states, railroad shares, mining interests, real estate in New York, Chicago, and San Francisco. Thornwood is maintained with the interest on his investments. He does not touch the principal. But empires built on extraction do not last. They consume until nothing remains, and Lockwood's empire is no different. The forests of Michigan are not infinite. By 1895, the densest stands of white pine are gone, logged out, replanting is not profitable. Lockwood's camps move north into less accessible territory, costs rise, yields fall, profit margins narrow, competition intensifies, new lumber barons with newer equipment, railroads that reach deeper into forest land. Federal regulations beginning to restrict the free-for-all that made fortunes in the 1870s. Lockwood fights every restriction. He hires lobbyists. He funds candidates. He testifies before committees, but the tide is turning. By 1898, his lumber income has fallen by 40%. He diversifies, invests in manufacturing, paper mills that convert timber into pulp. The mills are profitable initially. Then labor disputes begin. Workers organize. Strikes interrupt production. Lockwood responds with force. Hired guards, strikebreakers, violence. A strike at one of his Michigan mills in 1899 turns deadly. 3 workers shot, 1 dies, the local sheriff investigates. Lockwood's guards are arrested. They are released within a week. No trial, witnesses recant, but the newspapers cover it. The story spreads. Lockwood's name, carefully polished for 2 decades, is tarnished again. This time the stain does not wash out. Reform movements are stronger now. Muckraking journalists expose industrial abuses. The public mood is shifting. Robber barons are no longer celebrated, they are scrutinized. Lockwood retreats to Thornwood. He spends more time there, less time traveling. His health declines, gout, high blood pressure, a persistent cough that doctors cannot explain. He smokes cigars constantly. He drinks brandy every evening. He sleeps poorly. Margaret notices the change. He is aging rapidly. His hair grays. His face reddens. He gains weight, then loses it. He becomes irritable, suspicious. He accuses staff of stealing. He fires servants without cause, rehires them days later. She tries to manage his moods, to calm him, to maintain order in the household, but he is beyond calming. The stress of defending his empire, of watching it contract, of knowing that his legacy will be tied to violence and exploitation, consumes him. In 1902, a major recession hits. The stock market crashes. Businesses fail, banks close, Lockwood's investments, once diversified for safety, prove vulnerable. His railroad shares plummet. His mining interests collapse. His paper mills, already struggling, lose access to credit. He does not go bankrupt. His fortune is too large for that, but he loses nearly 40% of his wealth in 18 months. The principal is touched now. For the first time, he withdraws from his core capital to cover expenses. Thornwood becomes a burden. The annual cost to maintain it is $120,000, roughly $3.6 million today. Staff salaries, taxes, repairs, utilities, grounds maintenance. The house consumes money whether he lives there or not. He considers selling, but to sell would be to admit defeat. The house is his monument, his proof that he transcended his origins. To sell it would erase everything he built. So he holds on, he cuts staff, reduces entertaining, closes wings of the house. The eastern wing, already sealed, is joined by sections of the third floor. Dust covers settle over furniture. Silence spreads through hallways that once echoed with guests. Margaret feels the change acutely. The house is emptying, the performance is ending, but she is not relieved, she is frightened. Because if the house fails, what happens to her? Her identity is tied to Thornwood as much as Lockwood is. She is the mistress of this estate. Without it, who is she? In 1905, their son, William Jr., graduates from Yale. He is 21. Lockwood expects him to join the family business, to take over the mills, the investments, the management of what remains of the empire. William Jr. refuses. He has no interest in lumber, in business, in continuing his father's work. He wants to study law, to practice in New York, to build a career separate from the Lockwood name. The refusal enrages Lockwood. He sees it as betrayal, as rejection. He has built everything for his son, and his son wants none of it. They argue bitterly, publicly. Guests at Thornwood hear shouting behind closed doors. Staff witness cold silences at meals. The break is not immediate, but it is inevitable. By 1906, William Jr. moves to New York permanently. He changes his address. He limits visits to Thornwood. He begins using his middle name, Harrison, to distance himself from his father's reputation. The relationship does not formally end. It simply fades into polite estrangement. Lockwood is left without an heir willing to carry forward his work. His daughter, Catherine, is 21, intelligent, capable, but she is a woman. In Lockwood's mind, she cannot inherit the business. She will marry, her husband will control whatever she receives. Lockwood does not trust that future. He begins to see Thornwood not as a monument, but as a tomb, a structure that will outlast him. That will stand empty after he is gone. That will be sold, divided, or demolished by people who do not understand what it costs to build. The thought obsesses him. He spends hours in the library reviewing plans, correspondence, photographs from the construction. He writes letters to architects, to preservation societies, to anyone who might ensure the house survives. No one offers guarantees. Houses are not permanent. They are maintained by living people with living resources. When those resources fail, the houses fail too. In 1908, Lockwood suffers a stroke, mild but frightening. He recovers mobility but loses clarity. His speech slurs, his memory falters. He forgets names, dates, details he once commanded effortlessly. Margaret becomes his manager. She handles correspondence. She makes decisions about the estate. She shields him from stress. But she cannot shield him from the knowledge that he is failing, that his empire is failing, that everything he built is slipping away. By 1910, he is confined largely to Thornwood. He walks the halls. He sits in rooms where he once hosted hundreds. He looks out windows at grounds that are still immaculate but feel hollow. He dies in November 1911, a second stroke. Massive, he is 77 years old. The funeral is large, expected. Newspapers cover it. They recount his career. They mention the timber empire, the investments, the mansion. They are polite. They do not mention the violence, the exploitation, the workers who died in his mills, the forests reduced to stumps. Lockwood is buried in the private cemetery at Thornwood. Near Eliza, though his marker is far grander. Marble, engraved with his name, dates, and a single word, builder. Margaret stands at the grave surrounded by children, relatives, business associates. She feels relief and guilt for feeling relief. He is gone. The weight of his presence lifts, but the weight of the house remains. And it is hers now. Alone. Lockwood's will is read 2 weeks after his funeral. The estate is valued at $4.2 million, roughly $126 million today. Half of what it was at its peak, still substantial, but not enough to guarantee Thornwood's survival indefinitely. The distribution is specific. Margaret receives Thornwood, an annual income of $60,000 and control of certain investments. William Jr. receives the business interests, the mills, the remaining timber rights, the railroad shares. Catherine receives cash and properties in New York. Staff bequests are included. The butler, the housekeeper, key servants who remained loyal, small amounts but meaningful. Lockwood was not sentimental, but he understood loyalty. Margaret is 59 years old. She has spent 33 years managing Thornwood. Now she owns it. The distinction matters. It is hers to keep or sell. To maintain or let decay. For the first time since her marriage, she has agency. She chooses to stay, not from love of the house, from lack of alternatives. Where would she go? The Manhattan townhouse was sold years earlier during Lockwood's financial retrenchment. Her family's Boston home is occupied by a younger brother and his family. She has no other residence. And despite everything, Thornwood is familiar. She knows every room, every routine, every crack in the plaster and squeak in the floorboards. It is her prison and her domain. She cannot imagine life beyond its walls. The staff remains, reduced but loyal. 18 people now. The butler, the housekeeper, 2 footmen, 5 maids, 3 kitchen staff, 2 groundskeepers, a chauffeur, a laundress, a handyman. They have been with her for decades. They are not just employees. They are witnesses to her life. She restructures the household, closes more rooms. The ballroom is shuttered. The music room is covered. Guest wings are locked. She lives in a fraction of the house, her private suite, the small dining room, the library, the chapel. The reduction is pragmatic, with fewer people to manage and no entertaining obligations. She does not need 110 rooms, she needs 15. The rest are memory. Visitors are rare. Her children visit occasionally. William Jr., perhaps twice a year, Catherine more frequently but briefly. They have their own lives now. Thornwood is not their responsibility. It is Margaret's. Friends from the old social circuit write. Some visit, but the visits feel strained. The parties are over. The purpose that once animated Thornwood is gone. What remains is a widow in a mansion too large for one person. Margaret fills her days with routine. She rises at 7, breakfast alone. She reviews the household accounts. She walks the gardens when weather permits. She reads extensively. History, biography, fiction she never had time for during the hosting years. She corresponds with Catherine with her few remaining friends. Afternoons are for solitude. She sits in the chapel. Or the library. She does not weep. She does not rage. She simply exists, quietly, without expectation. The house begins to age, not dramatically, but noticeably. Paint fades, wallpaper yellows, carpets wear. Repairs are made only when necessary. The roof is maintained. Plumbing is fixed, but cosmetic issues are left. Margaret does not care how the ballroom looks. No one sees it. By 1915, the gardens are reduced. 2 groundskeepers cannot maintain 40 acres. Sections are allowed to naturalize. Flower beds become meadows. Orchards are untended. The formal gardens near the house remain. The rest returns to forest. Money is not the issue. Margaret has sufficient income, but motivation is. Why maintain a showplace when there are no shows? World War I begins in Europe in 1914. America enters in 1917. The war changes everything. Taxes increase. Inflation rises. Staff is harder to find. Young men enlist. Young women take factory jobs. Domestic service becomes less appealing. Margaret loses 3 staff members to the war effort. They are not replaced. The household contracts further, 14 people, then 12. She contributes to the war effort in expected ways, buys Liberty bonds, donates to the Red Cross, offers Thornwood as a convalescent hospital if needed. The offer is noted but not accepted. The house is too remote, too expensive to retrofit. The war ends in November 1918. The world that emerges is different. The Gilded Age is over. The Jazz Age begins. The values that built places like Thornwood are questioned. Excess is suspect. Modesty is virtuous. Margaret sees the change in her children. William Jr., now a lawyer in New York, expresses no interest in inheriting Thornwood. He lives in a Fifth Avenue apartment, modest by his father's standards. Comfortable but not palatial. He has no desire to become a mansion keeper. Catherine marries in 1920. Her husband is a professor. They live in a faculty house at Princeton. Small, charming, manageable. Catherine visits her mother and tells her gently that she will not take Thornwood. She could not afford to maintain it. She does not want to. Margaret understands. She does not argue. She feels no bitterness, only resignation. Thornwood will not pass to the next generation. It will end with her. The question is how. She consults lawyers, explores options. She could donate the house to an institution, a university, a museum, a hospital, but the cost of conversion is prohibitive and no institution wants the liability. She could sell to a developer. The land is valuable, but selling would mean demolition. The house would be razed, the grounds divided. Everything Lockwood built would disappear. She finds she cannot do that, not from loyalty to him. From respect for the people who built it, the workers who died during construction, the servants who maintained it. Eliza buried in the cemetery. They are all part of Thornwood now. To erase it would erase them. So she holds on. She lives in her 15 rooms. She manages her reduced staff. She watches the house age around her. By 1925, she is 73 years old. Her health declines. Arthritis limits her mobility. Her hearing fades. She moves through Thornwood slowly, leaning on a cane. The staff protects her. They anticipate her needs. They shield her from distress. They love her in the way servants love employers who treat them with dignity. In the spring of 1927, Margaret suffers a fall. She is walking in the garden. She trips on an uneven path. She fractures her hip. The injury is serious at her age. She is confined to bed for weeks, then to a wheelchair. She does not fully recover. The house becomes harder to navigate. Stairs are impossible. She moves her bedroom to the first floor. A sitting room is converted. She knows time is short. She revises her will. Thornwood and its remaining endowment will be placed in a trust. The house will be maintained as long as funds allow. When the money runs out, the trust will sell the property with the stipulation that any buyer must preserve the main structure or donate it for preservation. It is the best she can do, not a guarantee, a hope. Margaret dies in October 1928, quietly. In her sleep, she is 76 years old. The funeral is small. Her children, a few remaining friends, the household staff. She is buried beside Lockwood and Eliza in the Thornwood Cemetery. The house passes to the trust. It will survive her by 2 decades, but its fate is already written. The trust operates Thornwood as Margaret intended. The house is maintained. A skeleton staff remains, a caretaker, a housekeeper, a groundskeeper. They preserve the structure, keep the roof sound, prevent vandalism. But they do not live there fully. Thornwood is too large, too empty, too sad. The 1930s are difficult years. The Great Depression contracts everything. The trust's investments lose value. Income falls, maintenance budgets shrink, repairs are deferred. The house begins to look tired. By 1935, sections of the roof leak. Water stains appear on ceilings, plaster cracks. The trust authorizes repairs, but only the most essential. The ballroom ceiling is ignored. The music room's stained glass is patched but not restored. The grounds shrink further. The greenhouses are abandoned. Glass breaks. Frames rot. No one visits. The house is not open to the public. It is not a museum. It is simply waiting. For what no one is certain. William J.R. dies in 1936. Heart attack. He is 52. His will does not mention Thornwood. He severed his connection long ago. Catherine remains. She visits once a year. She walks through the rooms. She finds the experience unsettling. The house is full of ghosts, not supernatural, memories, her parents, the guests, the life that once filled these spaces, now only silence. She tells the trust she cannot continue the annual visits. They are too painful. The trust understands. Thornwood becomes a property managed by lawyers and accountants. No family oversight, just financial maintenance until the money ends. World War II accelerates the decline. Materials are rationed. Labor is scarce. The trust struggles to find anyone willing to work at Thornwood. By 1943, only one caretaker remains. An elderly man who lives in the former butler's quarters. He does what he can. It is not enough. Vandals discover the house. Teenagers from nearby towns. They break windows. They spray paint walls. They steal brass fixtures, copper pipes, anything valuable. The caretaker reports the damage. The trust files police reports. Nothing changes. The house is too remote, too large, too difficult to protect. By 1945, Thornwood is deteriorating visibly. Shutters hang loose. Paint peels, the terraces crack, weeds push through marble, the gardens are forest again. The house is being reclaimed by the land it was carved from. The trust reviews its options. The endowment is nearly depleted. Maintenance costs exceed income. Selling is inevitable. But who will buy? They list the property in 1946. The asking price is $500,000. Roughly $7 million today. For 240 acres, a 110-room mansion and historic provenance. No offers, they reduce the price. $400,000, then $300,000, still no offers. Post-war buyers want new houses, efficient, modern, manageable. They do not want Gilded Age relics that cost a fortune to heat and require full-time staff. In 1947, a developer inquires. He offers $150,000. His plan is demolition. The mansion will be razed. The land will be subdivided, 70 residential lots, a new suburb for returning veterans. The trust hesitates. This violates Margaret's wish that the house be preserved. But the trust is not bound by sentiment. It is bound by fiduciary duty. To maximize value for the endowment's remaining purposes, scholarships for descendants of Thornwood staff, the trust accepts the offer. The sale closes in November 1947. Demolition is scheduled for spring 1948. Before the wreckers arrive, a photographer is commissioned. His name is Arthur Calloway. He is hired by the New York Historical Society to document Thornwood before it is destroyed. Calloway spends 3 days in the house. February 1948. The building is cold, unheated. His breath fogs. He works in natural light, no electricity. The generator was shut down years ago. He photographs systematically every major room. Architectural details: the Great Hall, the staircase, the ballroom with its water-stained ceiling, the library with empty shelves, the locked wing now opened for the first time since 1890. The locked wing is empty, stripped, dust thick on the floors, but Calloway feels something there, not supernatural, historical weight. He writes in his field notes, "These rooms held a person no one spoke of. I can feel her absence more than I felt presence in any other part of the house." He photographs the chapel, Margaret's refuge, light through stained glass, pews that seated 20, an altar untouched since her death. He finds a small notebook in a pew, Margaret's prayer journal. He reads one entry: "I have done my duty, I have kept my promises, I do not know if that is enough." He leaves the journal where he found it. The wreckers will take it with everything else. Calloway's final photograph is the view from the front terrace, looking north across the Hudson. The river is gray. The opposite shore is visible. The forest frames the shot. It is a beautiful composition, and it is an ending. The demolition begins in March 1948, a crew of 12 men. Salvage comes first. Anything valuable is removed: marble mantels, mahogany paneling, stained glass, light fixtures, doors, hinges, handles. Buyers are lined up: other estates, antique dealers, architectural salvage firms. The great staircase is dismantled in sections. It will be sold to a hotel in Saratoga Springs. The ballroom's chandelier goes to a private collector in Philadelphia. The library's fireplace surround goes to a museum in Connecticut. What cannot be sold is destroyed. Plaster walls are sledgehammered, floors are ripped up, framing is exposed, then cut. Timber is hauled to a mill and processed. Stone is crushed for fill. The work takes 4 months. By July 1948, the site is cleared. The mansion is gone. The foundations are filled. Topsoil is spread. Grass seed is scattered. By autumn, the land is graded. Surveyors mark lot lines. Streets are cut. Utilities are trenched. 70 houses begin construction. Within 2 years, Thornwood Estates is complete. 70 modest homes, veterans and their families, young couples with children, new lives on old ground. None of them know what stood there before. A few hear rumors: a mansion, a rich family, but the details are vague. The past is buried. The cemetery remains. It is deeded separately, protected. Margaret's will stipulated it could never be disturbed. 3 graves: William Lockwood, Eliza Bellingham, Margaret Ashford Lockwood. The markers are simple: dates and names, no epitaphs. The cemetery is maintained by the trust's remaining funds. A lawn service comes quarterly. The stones are cleaned annually. No one visits. The family line has ended. The staff who knew them are dead. By 1960, the cemetery is forgotten by everyone except the town's historical society. They maintain a file: photographs, documents, Calloway's images, but it is a small file, not much interest. Thornwood, once the grandest estate on the Hudson, fades into local lore. Old-timers remember it vaguely. Some claim to have attended parties there. Most are lying or confused. The mansion was never as public as they remember. Historians occasionally research it. Graduate students writing theses on Gilded Age architecture. Preservation advocates documenting lost estates. They find the same materials: Calloway's photos, newspaper accounts, Margaret's letters donated to the Massachusetts Historical Society by Catherine's daughter in 1965. The letters reveal the most: Margaret's loneliness, Eliza's hidden life, the cost of maintaining appearances, the slow collapse of fortune. The question that haunted Margaret: was any of it worth it? No one can. The house is gone, the people are dead. Only the story remains, and stories, unlike stone, can be told in different ways. Thornwood's destruction was not unique. Between 1930 and 1970, over 500 grand estates were demolished in the United States. The reasons varied, but the pattern was consistent. Families died or dispersed. Fortunes shrank. Taxes and maintenance costs became unsustainable, and America's appetite for monumentalism faded. The generation that built these houses believed in permanence. They built in stone. They hired the best architects. They created structures designed to last centuries. but they did not account for the fact that permanence requires money, maintenance, and someone willing to care. When any of those three elements fails, permanence becomes impossible. Thornwood is a case study. William Lockwood spent nearly $2 million building it, an enormous sum in 1880. He believed the house would establish his family in perpetuity, that his children would inherit it, that their children would inherit it, that the Lockwood name would be tied to the estate forever. He was wrong. His son rejected the inheritance. His daughter could not afford it. His widow held on as long as she could, but she was mortal, and when she died, the house had no one left who wanted it enough to save it. This pattern repeated across America, the Vanderbilt estates, the Astor properties. The mansions of Pittsburgh steel barons and San Francisco railroad magnates. Some survived, most did not. Why? Because the social structure that supported these houses collapsed. The servant class evaporated, domestic work became less desirable, wages rose, families who once employed 50 people could not find 5 because tax laws changed, property taxes increased, estate taxes penalized concentrated wealth. Keeping a mansion became financially irrational because values shifted. The conspicuous consumption of the Gilded Age became embarrassing in the 20th century. Modesty replaced grandeur as an American virtue. Efficiency replaced monumentalism. And because houses, no matter how grand, are not people, they cannot argue for their own survival, they cannot generate income, they cannot adapt, they are fixed, static. And when the world around them changes, they become obsolete. Thornwood's haunting is not supernatural, it is cultural. It is the ghost of an America that believed in dynasties, in permanence, in the idea that wealth and willpower could defeat time. That America was wrong, and the ruins of its ambition are scattered across the country. Some preserved, many lost, all testifying to the same truth: nothing lasts forever, not stone, not fortune, not empties built to deny mortality. But Thornwood's true haunting lies not in its destruction. It lies in what happened within its walls, the secrets kept, the lives hidden, the truths buried. Eliza Bellingham's story is the clearest example. A woman erased from public record, locked away, cared for but concealed. Her existence was an inconvenience to be managed, not with cruelty, with silence. She lived in Thornwood for 7 years, from 1883 until her death in 1890. 7 years in comfortable rooms that were also a prison. 7 years during which her sister visited daily but could not free her. 7 years in which she existed without existing, present but invisible. Her death was not mourned publicly. She received no obituary, no funeral, just a quiet burial in an unmarked grave that even the family forgot. Why? Because mental illness in the 19th century was viewed as shameful, a defect, a stain on family honor. To acknowledge Eliza publicly would be to admit imperfection, and families like the Lockwoods and Bellinghams could not afford imperfection. Their social position depended on the appearance of flawlessness. So Eliza disappeared, not physically, socially. She became a non-person. A secret kept so thoroughly that even decades after her death, almost no one knew she had existed. Margaret carried that secret for 33 years. The weight of it shaped her life. Every party she hosted, every guest she greeted, every smile she performed, all of it shadowed by the knowledge that her sister was upstairs, locked away, alone. The cost was immeasurable. Not in money, in spirit. Margaret's letters reveal a woman who felt increasingly hollow, who questioned the value of her life, who wondered if the performance was worth the price. She never spoke publicly about Eliza, not even after Lockwood died. The secret outlived the people it protected, but Eliza's story is only the most dramatic. Thornwood held other secrets, smaller, more common, but no less significant. The servants who worked there. Their lives were shaped by the house, but never recorded. We know names from payroll ledgers, we know salaries, we know job titles, but we do not know their stories, what they thought, what they sacrificed, what they endured. Domestic service in the Gilded Age was grueling. Long hours, low pay, little autonomy. Servants lived at the pleasure of their employers. They could be dismissed without cause. They had no labor protections, no recourse. Some servants spent decades at Thornwood. They were loyal, but loyalty does not mean contentment, it means survival. What did they think of the parties, the excess? The champagne flowing while they worked 16-hour days? We do not know. They left no letters, no diaries. Their silence was required, and it was total. Thornwood's secrets also include the source of its wealth. Lockwood's fortune came from clear-cutting forests, from exploiting immigrant labor, from practices that were legal but brutal. He never acknowledged the cost. He never apologized. He built a mansion instead, as if beauty could absolve ugliness. As if charity could balance exploitation. It could not. And when historians researched Thornwood decades later, they found records, congressional testimony about his labor practices, newspaper accounts of strikes and violence, evidence that the mansion was built on foundations more fragile than stone. The house was meant to be a legacy. Instead, it became evidence of ambition without ethics, of wealth without conscience, of monuments built to distract from the methods that paid for them. Thornwood's design reveals another layer of secrecy. The layout itself was a tool for concealment. The locked wing was intentional. Hunt's architectural plans show it clearly. A separate staircase, doors that lock from the outside, windows facing away from the main house. This was not accidental. It was designed to hide. The ballroom's placement is also significant, at the center of the house. The largest, brightest, most public room. It drew attention. It announced celebration. And while guests danced and drank, the locked wing remained invisible. This is the architecture of forgetting, space designed to direct attention toward approved narratives and away from uncomfortable truths. Grand staircases, soaring ceilings, elaborate ornamentation. These features do more than impress. They distract, they overwhelm the senses, they prevent closer examination. Guests touring Thornwood saw what they were meant to see: wealth, taste, success. They did not see Eliza's wing. They did not see the servants' quarters on the third floor. They did not see the coal chutes and laundry facilities in the basement. They did not see the machinery that made the illusion possible. This is true of most Gilded Age estates. They were theaters, carefully staged, every sightline considered, every room curated. The goal was not comfort, it was performance, and the performance required secrets, spaces where the unglamorous work happened, where the staff labored, where the family's failures were hidden. Thornwood perfected this. The public rooms were spectacular. The private reality was far more complicated. Hunt knew what he was designing. He was not naive. He had built mansions for the Vanderbilts, the Astors, the Whitneys. He understood that these houses were not homes. They were instruments of social power. His job was to create spaces that reinforced his client's status. That made visitors feel awed. That turned wealth into legitimacy. He succeeded. Thornwood did everything Lockwood wanted. It impressed. It intimidated. It announced arrival. But it could not sustain the illusion forever, because houses are physical, and physical things decay, and once decay begins, the secrets emerge. When Thornwood was demolished, workers found things: letters hidden in walls, bottles buried under floorboards, graffiti scratched into attic beams by servants, small acts of resistance, tiny rebellions against the performance. None of it was preserved. Wrecking crew discarded it, but a few workers remembered. They told stories. Local historians collected some of them. One worker reported finding a diary hidden behind a baseboard in the locked wing. He did not read it carefully. He discarded it with the rest of the debris. But he remembered one line: "I am still here, no one knows." Eliza's words, or Margaret's, or a servant's, we will never know. The diary is gone. The voice is silenced again, but the fact that it existed matters. It means someone in Thornwood felt unseen, unheard, and needed to write it down, to leave evidence. To say, "I was here, this happened. Do not forget, we forgot anyway." What did Thornwood cost? The financial ledger is clear. $1.8 million to build. Another $3 million in maintenance, furnishing, and operation over 65 years. Roughly $4.8 million total. About $144 million in today's currency. But money is only one kind of cost. Margaret spent 33 years performing, hosting, smiling, hiding her sister, hiding her exhaustion, hiding herself. What is that worth? How do you price a life spent in service to appearances? Eliza spent 7 years locked away, comfortable but isolated, cared for but erased. What is that worth? How do you measure the cost of invisibility? The servants who spent decades at Thornwood, who worked until their bodies broke, who were loyal because they had no choice. What is their cost? The workers who built Thornwood, 3 died during construction. Dozens more were injured. They are footnotes in the historical record, barely mentioned. What is their cost? The forests that were clear-cut to pay for the mansion. Ecosystems destroyed, wildlife displaced, carbon released. The environmental cost is incalculable, and it was never included in Lockwood's accounting. Thornwood's true cost cannot be measured in dollars. It must be measured in lives, in choices, in what was sacrificed to build and maintain an illusion. And when we look at the mansion's brief existence, 65 years from construction to demolition, we must ask, was it worth it for Lockwood? Perhaps he achieved what he wanted: social legitimacy, a monument, a name that lasted beyond his death. For a time, for Margaret, unlikely. She spent her life in a beautiful prison. She gained status. She lost selfhood. For Eliza, no, she lost everything: freedom, visibility. Life itself, for the servants, No, they worked hard, they were paid, but they were expendable. Their names are forgotten for the forests. No, they were destroyed. They did not regenerate in Lockwood's lifetime, or ours, for society. This is the harder question. Did mansions like Thornwood contribute anything lasting? Beauty, yes. Architectural innovation, perhaps. But at what cost? And can beauty justify exploitation? Can architectural significance excuse erasure? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the questions we must ask about every monument, every structure built on uncounted costs. Thornwood is gone, but others remain, and they carry the same histories, the same secrets, the same costs when we visit preserved estates. When we admire their ballrooms and gardens, when we imagine the parties and the glamour, we must also ask who paid for this, whose labor, whose silence, whose land. Only then can we see the whole picture, not just the mansion. But the shadow it casts. Thornwood could have been saved. The Trust tried, Margaret tried, but they failed because preservation requires more than intention. It requires resources, community support, legal protection, and someone willing to fight. In 1948, historic preservation in America was weak. The National Trust for Historic Preservation was not founded until 1949. The National Historic Preservation Act was not passed until 1966. Local landmark laws were rare. Thornwood fell through the gaps. It was historically significant, architecturally important, culturally revealing, but there was no mechanism to protect it. Today, mechanisms exist. National Register of Historic Places, state and local landmark designations, preservation easements, tax incentives for restoration, adaptive reuse strategies that allow historic buildings to serve new purposes. These tools save buildings, but they are not applied evenly. Wealthy communities preserve, poor communities do not. Buildings associated with famous people or events are saved. Those associated with ordinary people or uncomfortable histories are not. This is selective memory. We preserve what makes us proud. We demolish what makes us uncomfortable. Thornwood fell into the second category. Its history was complicated. Its owner's fortune was tainted. Its most significant secret, Eliza's imprisonment, was shameful, easier to erase than interpret. But erasure is not justice. It is avoidance. If Thornwood had been preserved, it could teach. It could complicate our understanding of the Gilded Age. It could show not just wealth but cost, not just beauty but brutality, not just achievement but exploitation. The locked wing could be exhibited, Eliza's story told, the servants' quarters restored, the full history presented without sanitization. That would be uncomfortable, but discomfort is valuable. It forces reckoning. It prevents mythologizing. Instead, we lost Thornwood, and with it the opportunity to confront its truths in 3 dimensions. We are left with photographs, documents, stories, valuable but incomplete. Other estates survive. Some are museums, open to the public, interpreted with increasing honesty. The Vanderbilt mansions in Newport now include exhibits on servant life. Some estates acknowledge the robber baron practices that funded them. This is progress, but it is not universal. Too many historic houses still present sanitized histories. They focus on architecture and aesthetics. They celebrate the families. They ignore the costs. This must change. Every preserved estate should tell the whole story. Who built it, with whose labor, with what money, at what cost, who lived there, who was hidden, who was erased. Only then does preservation serve truth, not just beauty. What can Thornwood teach us? First, monuments are not permanent. They require care, resources, and people who value them. When any of those fail, monuments fall. Second, wealth does not guarantee legacy. Lockwood was one of the richest men in America. He built a mansion designed to last centuries. It lasted 65 years. His name is forgotten except by historians. Third, secrets do not stay secret. They may be hidden for decades, but eventually they emerge. Documents survive. Stories are told. The truth surfaces. Eliza's erasure was nearly complete. But Margaret's letters preserved her. Calloway's photographs documented the locked wing. Historians pieced together her story. She is no longer invisible. Fourth, beauty does not excuse brutality. Thornwood was magnificent, but its magnificence was built on clear-cut forests and exploited labor. The beauty does not erase that, it complicates it. Fifth, preservation is political. We choose what to save. Those choices reflect our values. When we save grand estates but demolish workers' housing, we make a statement. When we interpret only the glamorous aspects of history, we make a statement. Thornwood's demolition was a choice. A financial one, but also a cultural one. America in 1948 was not interested in preserving Gilded Age excess. The country was building suburbs, looking forward. The past felt irrelevant. Today, we might choose differently. Historic preservation is stronger. Public interest in the Gilded Age is high. Thornwood would likely be saved, restored, interpreted, visited by thousands, but we cannot undo the past, we can only learn from it. Sixth, houses hold stories larger than architecture. Thornwood's significance is not just its design, it is what happened inside. The parties and the loneliness, the wealth and the exploitation, the public triumphs and the private tragedies. When we preserve historic houses, we preserve those stories. We create spaces where past and present can meet, where uncomfortable questions can be asked, where history becomes tangible. This is the value of preservation, not nostalgia, not aesthetics, education, reckoning, memory. Thornwood is gone, but its lessons remain, and they apply to every historic structure we encounter. When you visit a grand estate, ask who built this, who paid for it, who lived here, who was hidden, what stories are not being told. When a historic building faces demolition, ask, what will we lose, not just architecture? What knowledge, what evidence, what opportunity to learn? When preservation debates happen in your community, participate, advocate, question. Preservation is not automatic, it requires collective will. Thornwood did not have that. It had a widow who tried, a trust that ran out of money, and a community that did not fight. The result is a suburban subdivision. 70 houses on land that once held one. The families who live there are not to blame. They did not choose to erase history. They simply bought homes, but the history is erased nonetheless, and that is a loss we all bear. In 1965, a teenager living in Thornwood Estates was exploring the woods behind his family's home. He found the cemetery, 3 graves, weathered stones, names he did not recognize. He told his parents. They did not know the history. They asked neighbors. No one knew. Eventually, someone contacted the local historical society. The society sent a member. She identified the graves, Lockwood, Eliza, Margaret. She explained briefly. A mansion once stood here. It was demolished. This cemetery is all that remains. The teenager asked, why did they demolish it? The historical society member said no one wanted it. That answer haunted him. He became a preservationist. Decades later, he wrote about Thornwood. His article brought renewed attention. Researchers investigated. More documents were found. Calloway's photographs were rediscovered and published. Thornwood began to live again, not physically, in memory, in scholarship, in conversations about what we lose when we demolish the past. This is a different kind of haunting, not supernatural, cultural. The ghosts are not spirits, they are stories, and they refuse to stay buried. Margaret's letters are read by graduate students. Eliza's story is told in articles and lectures. Lockwood's labor practices are studied in business ethics courses. The mansion itself, through photographs and plans, is analyzed by architectural historians. Thornwood is gone, but it is not forgotten, and that matters because forgetting is easy. It requires no effort. History fades unless we actively preserve it, unless we tell the stories, unless we teach the lessons. Thornwood's haunting is a reminder. The past is not past, it shapes the present. The choices made in 1880, 1890, 1928, 1948, they echo today. The forests clear-cut for Lockwood's fortune have not fully recovered. The carbon they released contributed to climate change we experience now. The labor practices Lockwood employed set patterns that persisted. Exploitation did not end when he died. It evolved. The mental health stigma that erased Eliza continues. People are still hidden, still silenced, still erased to protect family reputations. The housing choices made in 1948, demolishing a mansion to build a suburb, reflect values that shaped American sprawl for decades. Thornwood is not an isolated story. It is a thread in a larger fabric. Pull it and other threads move. This is why preservation matters, not to freeze the past, to understand it, to see the connections, to recognize that what happened then affects what happens now, and to choose better. So we return to the beginning, the lights that never stayed on, the mansion built to last forever that lasted barely 6 decades, the secrets that money could not bury. What really happened at Thornwood? A man built a monument to escape his past, to transform exploitation into elegance, to buy legitimacy with lumber money. A woman spent her life performing a role, hiding her sister, hosting strangers, smiling when she felt empty. A hidden woman lived and died invisible, erased by shame. Buried without acknowledgement, servants worked until their bodies broke. They were loyal because they had no choice. Their names are mostly lost. Workers died building a house that would be demolished within living memory. Their sacrifice bought nothing permanent. Forests were destroyed, ecosystems collapsed. The environmental cost was never calculated. And at the end, a suburban subdivision, 70 modest homes where one grand mansion stood. Families who know nothing of what came before. This is not a ghost story. This is a reckoning with wealth, with power, with the costs we do not count, with the secrets we keep. Thornwood was not cursed, it was human, and that is more frightening, because curses can be broken. Human nature is harder to change. We still build monuments to escape uncomfortable truths. We still hide what shames us. We still exploit labor and resources and call it progress. We still demolish the past when it becomes inconvenient. Thornwood's story is not finished. It is ongoing, playing out in different forms in different places, but the pattern persists. Unless we choose differently, unless we ask the harder questions, count the fuller costs, tell the complete stories, preserve not just beauty but truth. This is the challenge Thornwood leaves us, not to mourn a lost mansion, to reckon with what it represented, and to decide whether we will repeat its mistakes or learn from them. The choice is ours. The house is gone. But the questions remain. What are we building? Who pays the cost? What are we hiding? What will remain when we are gone? Answer honestly. Build carefully. Hide nothing. Count every cost. Only then can we create something that deserves to last. Not because it is beautiful, because it is true. Thornwood is gone, but hundreds of historic estates remain, standing at the edge of survival or demolition, holding stories that need to be told, secrets that need to be revealed, lessons that need to be learned. You can help preserve them. Visit historic house museums. Support them financially. Your ticket purchases and donations fund preservation. They make interpretation possible. They keep these stories alive. When historic buildings in your community face demolition, speak up. Attend hearings, write letters, organize. Preservation happens because people fight for it. Demand complete histories. When you tour an estate, ask about the servants. Ask about the source of wealth. Ask who was hidden. Push for interpretation that tells the whole truth, not just the beautiful parts. Support organizations fighting for preservation. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, state and local historical societies, architectural conservancies, they need members, they need advocates. Share these stories, talk about what you learn, post about historic sites you visit, recommend documentaries and books. Cultural memory survives through conversation. If this investigation moved you, showed you something you did not know, or changed how you think about American history, help me continue this work. Like this video. It tells the algorithm that deep, researched, uncomfortable history matters, that there is an audience for truth, not just nostalgia. Subscribe to this channel. I investigate the hidden stories of America's most significant buildings, the secrets they hold, the lives they shaped, the costs they demanded. And tell me in the comments, which American mansion should I investigate next? What building's dark secrets need to be uncovered? What story needs to be told? Your support makes this possible. This kind of research takes time. Months in archives, hours reviewing documents, travel to sites, consultation with historians. I do it because these stories matter, because the past is not past, because understanding what happened helps us choose better now. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring about more than surfaces. Thank you for wanting the whole truth. The mansions may fall, but the stories survive, as long as we keep telling them.